Hey, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? وحشتوني جدا جدا جدا. I hope that you are doing well وكل سنة وانتم طيبين وبصحة وسعادة يا رب. I hope that everything is fine with you. This is okay. This is topic number 6. We will talk about it. It's more into the macro. يعني احنا دلوقتي لحد supply and demand كنا اتكلمنا about the microeconomics. Now this topic and the one after it, we're looking at the macroeconomics. When we look at the macroeconomics, we look at it in aggregate terms. Aggregate يعني whole, macro, okay? So again, to recap on things, the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics is that macroeconomics, we look at things in aggregate terms as a whole. I'm looking at a country's income, the world's income, نسبة التضخم, البطالة, حاجات that are very general on the macro level. Okay, the microeconomics, we're looking at economics that deals with individuals, whether they are firms or households. تمام? So now, if we're looking at the macro level, we need to discuss an important term called the business cycle. Again, from the term business cycle, this is a cycle. تمام? Cycle that describes what? The short term changes. Another word for changes is fluctuations that happen in any economy. تمام؟ عندي in any economy. Okay, economic activity. We go through phases. If you look at this diagram right here, this is an example of a business cycle. You have economic activity, it increases. When economic activity increases, this means that your productivity is increasing. ونسبة البطالة بتقل. So you have an expansion. This is called an expansion. لما economic activity بتطلع ده بسميها expansion. Until you hit or you reach the maximum point دي بنسميها boom. تمام؟ The peak أو the boom. The peak. بعد ما بوصل للبيك automatically ايه اللي بيحصل؟ Economic activity starts to fall. We call this a contraction أو a recession. إن إيه اللي بيحصل؟ economic activity بتقل، unemployment rate بيعلى لحد ما بنوصل the lowest point. The lowest point هنا دي بنسميها slump أو depression. طيب question. Because of the COVID-19 دلوقتي الاقتصاد العالمي عامة احنا فين بقى في السايكل دي؟ Where are we? Are we in the expansion? Are we increasing in economic activity? Or is there a decrease in production and in economic activity? There is a decrease. يبقى احنا we're actually heading, we are in a recession heading towards a slump or depression. تمام؟ يبقى البزنس cycle shows me the short run changes or fluctuations that happen in economic activities. عندي phases. عندي an increase in economic activity ده بسميها expansion. This is phase 1. لحد ما بوصل للبيك ده بسميها peak أو boom, and then it starts to decrease. I reach a recession. لما بوصل للminimum أو lowest point ده بسميها slump أو depression, and then the cycle continues. Okay? The business cycles happen in the short run. Economic growth اللي هي التنمية الاقتصادية. This is more of a long-term concept, and it shows the increase اللي بيحصل في الإنتاج وفي living standards. So economic growth happens in the long run, and it explains the increase in economic activity and in production in the long run, and in turn the standard of living أو مستوى المعيشة. تمام؟ طيب يبقى this is خلاصة الماكروeconomics. We have 3 objectives. Any macroeconomist أو in any macroeconomics course لازم يبقى فيه 3 objectives. Number 1, high output levels. إن الإنتاج أو البرودكشن يبقى high output. طيب لو الإنتاج عندي high output يبقى لازم I should have high productivity or high employment and low unemployment levels ونسبة البطالة تكون قليلة. And third, stable prices إن نسبة التضخم تكون stable. يبقى again the three macroeconomic objectives are to have what? High output levels, low unemployment and stable prices. تمام؟ output لما باجي بتكلم على output اللي هو الإنتاج at a macro level. Again, our main goal is to what? To produce any country. Its main goal is to produce at a high output, to produce goods and services as a high output. طيب, how do we measure output? بنستخدم gross domestic product وده هنتكلم عليه بعد شوية. بس again, our objective is to have high output levels and we measure that using the gross domestic product. The second objective is to have high employment. طب بنmeasure ال high employment ازاي؟ ببص على نسبة البطالة. Is it low or high؟ ال unemployment rate نسبة البطالة ده بجيبه ازاي؟ بنسميه ال U rate and it's equal to the number of people unemployed divided by the labor force. Number of people unemployed divided by the labor force times 100. طب labor force ده ايه؟ It's basically equal to the number of people employed plus the number of people unemployed. طب لو أنا معتبر نفسي unemployed ده معناه ايه؟ If you are unemployed, this means that you are currently not working but you are looking for a job. ان انا ابقى قاعد في البيت وما بدورش على شغل ده معناه ان انا I am not unemployed. لازم اكون بدور على شغل عشان to be considered to be unemployed. Okay. Price stability. Price stability, this means that we want to have stable or low inflation rates. Inflation rate أو نسبة التضخم, how do we calculate it? Using two measurements, either the percentage change in the GDP deflator or the percentage change in the CPI. CPI ده هنتكلم عليه في التوبيك الجاي. GDP deflator هنتكلم عليه في التوبيك ده. طيب, الحكومات in any country, what tools, what macroeconomic policies and tools do they use to achieve these three objectives اللي هو high output, low unemployment, stable prices. بيستخدموا ايه؟ في نوعين من policies that any economy or any government uses. Number one, fiscal policies. Fiscal policies, these are governmental policies that involve two things. Number one, taxes, ونمبر two, government expenditure. التاكسز اللي هي الضرائب, مش الضرائب دي الحكومة بتفرضها على الناس, ودي هي actually بتبقى العائد أو الدخل بتاع الحكومة. الضرائب دي الفلوس اللي احنا بندفعها للضرائب, the government takes it from us, وبيعملوا بيها ايه بقى؟ بيعملوا بيها government expenditure. Expenditure يعني spending. What do governments spend money on? They spend money on public goods and services to provide us with public transportation, public hospitals, public schools, infrastructure, roads, كل الكلام ده. تمام؟ And they also provide us with transfer payments اللي هي ايه؟ المعاشات, التأمينات, كل الكلام ده. تمام؟ طيب, تاني, fiscal policy. These are governmental policies that use two things. Number one, taxes, governmental taxes, and from the money collected from taxes, the government spends money, government expenditure, on providing us with public goods and services and transfer payments. ده fiscal policy. monetary policy برضو it's governmental, بس بيبقى فيه تعاون مع الجفرمنت ومع البنك المركزي the central bank and it works using two things the money supply the amount of money in the country تمام and سعر الفايدة the interest rate now if you recall هنا في مصر مثلا دلوقتي في أزمة الكورونا الكوفيد 19 البنك المركزي جه عمل ايه في سعر الفايدة جه عمل ايه في القروض أجل القروض أجل القروض لمدة 6 شهور فالكلام ده كله في الأزمات these are examples of monetary policies الحكومات والبنوك المركزية they go in the economy they interfere they try to solve the problems that are happening at the economy تمام يبقى again fiscal policy is what is we use government taxes and government expenditure in monetary policy this is money supply and interest rates طيب هنا we have questions examples I want to know whether they are monetary policy MP or fiscal policies FP a change in income tax على طول taxes ده fiscal increase in money supply ده monetary increase in defense spending ايه defense spending this is government spending على الميليتري او الجيش والweapons والكلام ده government spending هيبقى ايه fiscal policy على طول طيب دي the elimination of the interest rate الانترست ريت سعر الفايدة ده على طول against taxable income this is monetary policy نغيرها monetary policy please تمام a change in the rate of interests that banks pay when they borrow money this is also monetary policy تمام I hope this is clear طيب نرجع تاني للobjectives احنا قلنا أول objective is how to measure a country's output الإنتاج production and we said we measure a country's output using the gross domestic product any output produced أي حاجة بتنتج is actually what مين بيشتريها طيب who spends money to buy it الهاوسهولدز والناس كلها فبرضو any output produced is also equal to the total spending in any economy is equal to the total income الدخل كل ده is a measure of GDP يبقى actually a country's income is equal to its total production is equal to its total spending and it's measured using the gross domestic product تمام يبقى again total production in any economy is equal to total income is equal to total expenditure قلنا expenditure يعني spending وكلمة total ممكن برضو تبقى معناها aggregate أو macro طيب إيه معنى بقى gross domestic product this is the definition of the gross domestic product and it's very important to understand this definition يعني عشان تفهم ال concept of GDP تمام تمام okay GDP is equal to the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time. Okay, GDP is the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time. Again, it's the market value. Market value, how do we calculate market value? The market value is basically equal to price times quantity. تمام؟ كل كلمة في الديفينيشن دي ليها معنى. That's why أنا بقول لك الديفينيشن دي مهمة جدا. تاني GDP is the market value. بنجيب الماركت value ازاي؟ It's price times quantity of all final goods and services. كلمة final هنا مهمة جدا لأن أنا I only care about المنتج النهائي, the final good or the final service. I do not care about intermediate goods. Intermediate goods, these are the goods or the components that you use in the production of other goods. For example, لو أنا عندي مثلا a chocolate bar, okay? سعر الشوكولاتة دي مثلا 10 pounds. Okay, this is the final price of the chocolate. Now, if I say the milk that I use in the chocolate مش هو already سعره موجود في ال10 جنيه بتاعة الشوكولات, يبقى أنا هنا I will not include milk because it is an intermediate good. I use it in the production of chocolate, which is the final good. وalready سعره موجود في السعر النهائي بتاع الشوكولات. We do this, we do not include intermediate goods to avoid double counting. إن أنا ما أحسبش سعر الملك مرتين. تمام؟ So in GDP, we only care about final goods and services. طيب, goods and services. What does this mean? إن أنا I'm only looking at production again. Production of goods and services. I do not care about anything that's related to money when I talk about gross domestic product. أنا هنا بتكلم على الإنتاج, على output. I'm not talking about money. يعني مش هتكلم على سوق الأسهم. They're not part of GDP اللي هي الستوك ماركت. مش هتكلم على سوق العملات مثلا, foreign exchange. It's not part of GDP. Anything that's related to anything financial or money-wise is not part of GDP. We only care about final goods and services that are produced within a country. البرودكشن هيحصل فين؟ جوه البلد. تمام؟ In the current year. Production that happens in your country, يعني لازم يبقى الإنتاج جوه البلد. مش مهم هو اللي أنتجه someone. If we're looking at the GDP of Egypt, of Egyptian, لو اللي بينتج مش مصري مش مهم as long as the location جوه البلد بتاعتي. تمام؟ In the current year, in this year, I do not care about production last year. I do not care about production next year. I care only about production that's happening in the current year. تمام؟ تاني, GDP is the market value. We calculate market value as price times quantity of all final, we only care about final goods and services. We do not take into consideration intermediate goods. Produced, أنتجت, so we do not care about anything financial in your country this year, not last year, not like next year, only current production. طيب, هنا عندنا examples. I want to know whether these are part of GDP or not. Goods that have been produced in the past years, are these part of GDP or not? من الدefinition هرجع تاني. الدefinition بتقول ايه؟ production that's happening this year. يبقى no, this will not be part of GDP because ايه بقى؟ We only care about production this year, not last year, not next year, only production this year. Number 2, stocks and bonds. Stocks and bonds اللي هم الأسهم والسندات. طب دول are they, let's think a little bit, are they final goods or services produced? No. دول ايه؟ دي فلوس. This is a financial transaction. احنا قلنا in GDP we do not consider anything that is related to financial transactions. So no, stocks and bonds are not part of GDP. Number 3, intermediate goods اللي هم زي ايه مثلا؟ goods used to produce final goods زي ايه؟ الكوكو for chocolate. الكوكو for chocolate ده اللي هو ايه؟ الكاكاو للشوكولات. Do I include intermediate goods or only the final good? We only include the final good. So the answer is also no. طيب هنا بقى المفروض أعرف الفرق between nominal GDP and real GDP. Nominal GDP, this is the gross domestic product that we measure using the current prices of the year. بستخدم السعر بتاع السنة. تمام؟ الريل جي دي بي هنا I use GDP بس بعمل ايه بقى؟ I fix prices using a base year. بثبت الأسعار على سنة محددة، السنة دي بسميها البيس يير. عشان أعرف ايه بقى؟ بعمل كده ليه؟ عشان أعرف الإنتاج فعلا قد ايه بعد ما I adjusted for prices. شلت الكونسبت اوف التغييرات اللي حصلت في البرايسز او التضخم، وبشوف بقى نسبة الإنتاج فعلا قد ايه. النومينال جي دي بي انا ببص على الانتاج بس with the current prices, which means ان انا يعني ما ببصش على الانتاج البيور. Okay, I'm not looking at output after adjusting for prices. هنا عندي example وهتبان لي بطريقة اسهل لما ابص هنا. Okay, هنا this is given. You have years 2008, 2009 and 2010. You have the price of hot dogs for the 3 years, the quantity of hot dogs for the 3 years, برضو عندي the price of burgers for the 3 years and the quantity of burgers for the 3 years. Now I would advise you لو انتوا معاكوا لو بتسمعوا recording ده تجيبوا ورقة وقلم وتحلوا معايا الثلاثة دول عشان تفهموا الدنيا ماشية ازاي، لأن ممكن يعني أو at least أول مرة تسمعوها تاني مرة تحلوها لوحدكم. It will make your life easier. Okay, how do we calculate nominal GDP? ده أول this part right here, this is given. Now من أول هنا I need to calculate nominal GDP, real GDP with deflator. تمام؟ Okay, nominal GDP if we go back to the definition is what? GDP measured at current prices. يبقى همسك كل سنة هجيب النومينال جي دي بي for the 3 years. هبتدي ب 2008. الكورنت برايس اوف هوت دوجز في 2008 كان كام؟ $1. واحنا قلنا how do we get GDP الماركت فاليو بنجيبه ازاي؟ price times quantity. هيبقى 1 times 100 price times quantity 1 times 100 plus for the next product burgers 2 times 50. So that's 100 plus 100. Your nominal GDP is 200. هعمل الكلام ده برضو ل 2009 و 2010. الnominal GDP for 2009 is 2 times 150 for hot dogs plus 3 times 100 for burgers. You get 600. The price for 2010, the nominal GDP is 3 times 200 plus 4 times 150. Your answer is 1200. تمام؟ طيب calculating real GDP. نرجع للدefinition of real GDP. This is looking at GDP by fixing the price using a base year. هو مديني البيس year. البيس year كام؟ 2008. يبقى أنا هعمل إيه هنا بقى؟ هجيب الريل جي دي بي للثلاث سنين بس هثبت السعر بتاع الثلاث سنين على سعر البيس year اللي هو 2008. So for 2008 the real GDP هو السعر هو نفسه 1. مش دي البيس year 2008. It's the same thing. So that's 1 times 100 plus 2 times 50. You get 200. طيب real GDP for 2009 هستخدم أنهي سعر؟ سعر البيس يير هيبقى إيه؟ 1 بتاع 2008 $1 times 150 plus 2 burgers سعر البرجرز في البيس years 2 times the quantity of 2009 2 times 100 هتبقى 350 for 2010 هتبقى $1 times 200 plus 2 times 150 you get 500. طب سؤال، لو البيس يير بقى 2009 هعمل ايه؟ هثبت السعر على 2009. يبقى مثلا the real GDP for 2008 لو البيس يير 2009 هيبقى ايه؟ 2 times 100 plus 3 times 50. تمام؟ This is how you calculate real GDP. You fix the prices of the 3 years on the price of the base year. تمام؟ طيب ال GDP deflator. ال GDP deflator بنجيبه ازاي؟ ال GDP deflator if you look here it's equal to nominal GDP over real GDP times 100. تمام؟ nominal GDP over real GDP times 100. أرجع هنا تاني هجيب ال GDP deflator for the 3 years. يبقى for 2008 the nominal GDP is what? 200. The real GDP is what? 200 times 100 you get 100. GDP deflator for 2009 is what? That's nominal 600 على 350 times 100 you get 171. The deflator for 2010 هيبقى كام؟ 1200 divided by 500 times 100 you get 240. تمام؟ يبقى تاني deflator is equal to nominal GDP على real GDP times 100 وهجيبه لل3 سنين أو للكذا سنة اللي هو مديهم لي. alright؟ طيب بعمل إيه بقى بالديفليتر ده؟ What do I use it for? I use it to calculate الانفليشن rate. طب بنجيب الانفليشن rate ازاي؟ الانفليشن rate is equal to the percentage change in the GDP deflator. The percentage change ده بنجيبه ازاي؟ It's the new value minus the old value divided by the old value times 100. تمام؟ طيب نرجع خلينا نعمله. Let me just هنا أجيب الديفليتر هنا for this year. تمام؟ ونعمله مع بعض هنا. اوكي تمام. لو ده الديفليتر GDP deflator for the 3 years I need to calculate the inflation rate okay, give me a second, just a second. Okay, I need to calculate the inflation rate okay, inflation rate from 2008 to 2009. How will you do that? What does it say here? Inflation rate is equal to what? The percentage change in your GDP deflator. أنا عندي من 2008 ل 2009 the new value, this is the new GDP deflator. السنة الجديدة هتبقى ايه؟ 2009. This is the new minus الأولد 2008 divided by the old times 100. طيب نعملها. يبقى الانفليشن rate will equal to a new deflator which is 171 minus 100. This is the old deflator divided by 100, the old deflator, times 100. You get, let's calculate it. Okay. 71%. You need to do the same for the next 2 years. Inflation rate from 2009 to 2010. So that would be what? 240 minus 171 divided by 171, all multiplied by 100. So you get 240 minus 171 divided by 171 times 100. You get 40.35%. I hope this is clear. So again, inflation rate is equal to the percentage change in your deflator. Okay? Okay. So we're done with this. Type. One approach of measuring GDP is called the expenditure approach or the total spending approach. One equation for GDP is equal to what? Y equals C plus I plus G plus NX. الإيكويشن دي is one of the ways of measuring GDP. احنا بس هنبص على الطريقة دي في الكورس ده، بس في طريقتين تانيين، بس in this course we will only look at this approach. This is called the expenditure approach or the total spending approach of GDP. Y is equal to a country's income، دخل الدولة، الإنتاج بتاع الدولة. Okay, which is also GDP. يبقى Y is equal to the country's income or اللي هو ال GDP. And this is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. C اللي هو ال consumption. I investment الاستثمار. G government spending. و NX is net exports. تاني, one way of measuring GDP is using the the expenditure approach or the total spending approach. The total spending approach. And this is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. نيجي للC. C, this is total spending or total expenditure by who. هو مين اللي بيصرف، مين اللي بيشتري؟ by households in any economy on what kind of goods? Final goods and services. تمام؟ تاني C, this is aggregate spending أو the total spending by مين اللي بيشتري، مين اللي بيصرف، مين بيشتري في أي دولة؟ households on what? On final goods and services. And see here, this is the largest component in the GDP. تمام؟ I, مين اللي بيستثمر؟ firms. يبقى actually I, we define it as what? Investment, which is the total spending by who? By firms. On what? On capital goods. ما هم الانفسترز بيشتروا ايه عشان ينتجوا؟ بيشتروا capital goods. زي ايه بقى الكابيتال جودز؟ التولز والماشينز والاكويبمنتس والفاكتوريز والكلام ده. وبرده في كلمة هنا مهمة قوي لازم نعرفها، كلمة inventory. inventory اللي هو المخزن او المخزون. اوكي. ده برضو this is part of investment. لما الانفنتوري بيزيد الانفستمنت برضو بيزيد. تمام. لما بصرف اكتر على capital goods this means that my investment also increases. تمام and so on. طب في كلمة هنا مهمة لازم أعرفها، كلمة depreciation. depreciation دي معناها إيه؟ إن أنا التولز والماشينز والإكويبمنتس بتوعي هما بيفضلوا بنفس القيمة من سنة ما اشتريتهم مثلا ل5 سنين. يعني مثلا بعد 5 سنين اشتريت مثلا ماشينز. Are they going to be with the same quality? No, they will not be of the same quality. ليه؟ بيحتاجوا صيانة، بيحتاجوا قطع غيار، بيحتاجوا يتغيروا and so on. تمام، يتجددوا. ف actually depreciation here means what? This is the lost the amount of quality, the loss of quality in your capital goods. Okay. طيب يبقى احنا كده قلنا ال C this is consumption or spending by households. لما ال C بيزيد if we go back to the equation أي واحدة من دول، يعني لو ال C زاد، لو مثلا consumer spends money this means that C will increase which means that Y اللي هو total spending اللي هو GDP برضه هيزيد. لو ال I زاد this means that ال Y هيزيد and so on. G this is government spending أو government purchases. Government spending أو government purchases. The government spending this is what بقى؟ الحكومة بتصرف على إيه؟ بتصرف إحنا قلنا على public goods and services، وبتصرف على المعاشات والتأمينات اللي هو لسه إحنا قايلين عليها transfer payments. طيب السؤال هنا بقى are transfer payments part of GDP؟ transfer payments this is money، واحنا قلنا من الدefinition ان احنا we only care about what the production of final goods and services. يبقى actually انا مش ال transfer payments yes الحكومة بتصرف فلوس عليهم بس they are not part of GDP because GDP if you go back to the definition this is the total market value of all final goods and services not including financial transactions. يبقى transfer payments are not part of GDP. Okay. And finally the last one is what? NX. NX ده بنسميها net exports. النت exports دي عبارة عن equation it's equal to exports minus imports. X for exports minus M for imports. تمام. الاكسبورتس اللي هي ايه؟ الصادرات اللي هي goods that are produced in your country and sold outside. Imports الواردات and these are goods that are produced abroad and sold in your country. لما الاكسبورتس يبقوا اعلى من الامبورتس this means ايه؟ لما الاكسبورتس تبقى اعلى من الامبورتس this means ان النت اكسبورتس بتاعتي هتبقى positive او greater than zero. ده بسميه ان انا عندي trade surplus عندي زيادة في السيربلس في التريد. اوكي. طيب لما الاكسبورتس تبقى اقل من الامبورتس this means that your net exports will be negative and you will have a trade deficit. Right? So again to sum up احنا كده قلنا what is not counted in GDP. قلنا اي intermediate goods are not counted. اي حاجة financial whether بقى government transfer payments او سوق البورصة stocks and bonds او اي حاجة زي ايه بقى هنا the work of house spouses والshadow economies. ده ايه بقى؟ الناس اللي بتشتغل مثلا على الفيسبوك عاملين جروبس وبيشتغلوا اونلاين بزنسز، هي الحكومة عندها اي فكرة على الشغل ده؟ لا. بيدفعوا ضرائب؟ لا. يبقى this is not included in GDP. وده بنسميها shadow economy اللي هو yes there are people that are working that and they are making income and this income should be part of the GDP بس it's not counted لأن we don't know anything about it. The person that's selling مثلا حاجات مناديل في الشارع ما هو برضه بياخد دخل بس it's not part of GDP because it's not included in it. It's not, the government doesn't know anything about it. تمام. طيب هنا عندي 4 examples عايزة أعرف إيه اللي هيحصل للجي دي بي لو الحاجات دي حصلت. تمام. A Debbie she's a girl she spends بتصرف 200 جنيه $200 to buy her husband dinner at a restaurant in Boston. تمام. هي راحت صرفت $200 عشان عزمت جوزها على العشاء. How is this going to affect GDP؟ هعمل ايه في الأول؟ أرجع للإيكويشن y equals c plus i plus g plus nx. طيب هسأل نفسي ده أنهي component؟ هو ده c ولا i ولا g ولا nx؟ This is C. Debbie she's a household. عملت ايه؟ صرفت $200 في الريستورانت. تمام؟ يبقى كده السي spending السي consumption by household زاد بكام؟ زاد ب $200. لما consumption يزيد by $200 this means ايه؟ ان الجي دي بي اللي هو الواي برضه هيزيد ب $200. اوكي؟ طيب B Sarah she spends بتصرف $1,800 on a new laptop. بتشتري لابتوب جديد بكام؟ ب $1,800. بتستخدمه ايه بقى؟ personal use ولا for her business؟ she's using it for her business. يبقى ده هيبقى consumption ولا استثمار؟ investment. this is investment. طيب يبقى الانفستمنت كده زاد بقد ايه؟ زاد ب $1,800. مش هي صرفت $1,800 يبقى كده الانفستمنت زاد ب $1,800. اللابتوب صنع فين؟ It was built in China واحنا بنفترض ان احنا عشان الاكزامبل دي من كتاب امريكي ان احنا سارة دي عايشة في امريكا. طيب the laptop was built in China يبقى ده import ولا export؟ This is an import. يبقى احنا قلنا ال net exports is equal to what؟ exports minus imports. يبقى ده هيبقى minus 1,800 اللي هو الامبورت. طب هنا الانفستمنت زاد ب 1,800 والاكسبورتس بقى minus 1,800 يبقى كده الجي دي بي هيتغير ولا مش هيتغير؟ positive 1,800 minus negative 1,800. This means that your GDP will not change. تمام؟ طيب the next one Jane spends $1,200 on a computer to use in her business. يبقى ده برضو investment. She bought a computer to use in her business. However بقى نبص هنا بقى she got last year's model. last year's model. نرجع بقى للدefinition of GDP. احنا قلنا ايه؟ GDP we care about production in the current year. I don't care about production last year. I don't care about production next year. So this will not change GDP. يبقى هنا no, GDP will not change. ليه؟ عشان the computer was built last year, not in the current year. تمام؟ طيب آخر واحدة General Motors builds. دي شركة سيارات. It builds 500 million worth of cars. تمام. Consumers only buy 470. طيب نفكر هنا شوية. ده هيغير الجي دي بي ازاي؟ General Motors عملت produced cars بما يوازي $500 مليون. الكونسومرز اشتروا كام منهم؟ 470. يبقى consumption هنا هو C زاد بكام؟ زاد ب 470 مليون. طب كده متبقي كام؟ كام worth of cars؟ متبقي 30 مليون worth of cars. طب العربيات اللي ما اتباعتش دي هتروح فين؟ هتروح المخزون. احنا لسه قايلين المخزون اللي هو اسمه ايه؟ الانفنتوري. an inventory is part of investment. يبقى الانفنتوري كده زاد بقد ايه؟ 30 مليون. يبقى الانفستمنت زاد ب 30 مليون والكونسومشن زاد ب 470 مليون. يبقى الجي دي بي زاد بكام؟ 500 مليون. اوكي. طيب هنا عندي another example. عندي country X. This is what it's producing and we need to calculate the GDP. عندي ال X اللي هو ال exports is 4, ال imports is 7, consumption is 87, government spending is 10, investment is 6. Can you calculate the GDP? Yes, you can. عندي ال C, again هكتب ال equation. GDP is equal to Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. C is 87 plus 6, the G is 10, plus NX, which is exports minus imports. Your answer, if you calculate it, your answer should be 100. Okay. Now الشابتر ده هو ممكن يبان بس صعب في أوله. However, طريقة مذاكرته المفروض تبقى بالورقة والقلم. يعني ممكن أول مرة أقراه وأسمعه أحس إن الدنيا كده يعني مش مظبوطة. However, يعني if you listen to it again, please get a paper and a pencil or a pen and answer the questions step by step. مرة واثنين وثلاثة. تمام? Now, if you have any questions related to it, we can work on it together. أو we can يعني we can have a discussion on it and so on. في طبعا الوركشيت أنا عملتها برضو عليها recording of how to answer questions on GDP. Thank you and have a nice day.